Hello and welcome to the Fantasyland Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shorten, and for the first time ever, I get to welcome everybody listening and watching on YouTube, or if you've got through this via TikTok or Instagram or Twitter, however it may be, welcome. If this is the first time, welcome. If this is not the first time, welcome back, and thank you always to all of the podcast listeners, whether that be Spotify, whether that be Stitcher, or whether that be Apple. Thank you again. I am pretty excited that I get to be doing it on a video. I been tossing and turning whether or not I was going to do this for a little bit now, but I figured why not? Melbourne lockdown, give it a crack. So let's get straight into it. Obviously, it's been a massive week whenever it comes to trading, free agency, all of the works. I'm going to try and break it all down for all of you listening, for who is going to be irrelevant, who is going to be extremely irrelevant, and then everybody in the middle who may pop into relevancy, but otherwise they probably won't. So we'll get cracking with an Aussie. We're going to talk about Jock Landale. He's gone to San Antonio. I don't think that he's going to get much of a role behind Jakob Poeltl, but I mean, kudos to the man. He had a really good Olympic campaign, played really well, and he is going to get his shot. So there's not much more to add to that. Another big man, Hassan Whiteside, he's over to Utah. It's been a really big drop from fame for Whiteside. I think that the speed and the way that the NBA is evolving has really caught up with him. He is not a good defender. Like, statistically, yeah, he's going to get you 14 boards. He's going to get you, off whenever he's let off the leash, he's going to get you 14 boards. He's going to get you 14, 15 points, and he's going to get you 4 blocks. He's going to get you some ridiculous counting numbers, but when it comes down to it, he has been irrelevant for a little while now. Teams have noticed that he chases his stats, he pads his stats where possible, and unless Gobert goes down, he's really going to struggle. He can't even play minutes at the 4, so unfortunately I don't really see a path to relevancy unless a Gobert injury happens, which fingers crossed that doesn't, but yeah, he's been pretty reliable. George Hill, he's back to Milwaukee. Rodney Hood, he's making his way to Milwaukee. I really like this in terms of depth. It gives the Chris Middletons and the Drew Holidays of the world a little bit of time to get back from a pretty hard-fought Olympic campaign, but overall, I don't see too much relevancy there. Markieff Morris and PJ Tucker to Miami. I love this in real life. I think this is a really nice move, and I think that they're going to share the power forward rotation. I think that Markieff is more upside, PJ's more likely to start, but they're pretty stacked in Miami, so I don't really see too much of fantasy relevancy. Markieff is the upside guy. He's going to have nights where he goes off. We've seen that before. PJ Tucker, he's a real-life great defender, but not much for fantasy. Ish Smith to Charlotte. I like this for his career. I like this for Charlotte. Devontae Graham, he's out. So, and I'll get onto him in a second. So Ish provides a bit more depth into the rotation, but unfortunately there's not much else that he's going to contribute. He's not really, he's a low key assist guy. So if you're in a deep league and you need some assists, Ish is probably a good guy to grab. But behind Lonzo Ball, behind Terry Rozier, there's not too much that he's going to be able to provide outside of some assists off the bench. So not too much there. Taylor Horton-Tucker, he's staying with LA. I love the LA team moving forward. I love it coming into this season, which sucks for Horton-Tucker because they're going to play their vets. LeBron James, who pretty much runs this team, he is going to go with players that he knows, going to go with players that he trusts, and players like Carmelo Anthony, he's going to get minutes over Horton-Tucker. You're going to get Malik Monk, he's going to get more minutes over Horton-Tucker as well, I'd imagine. So, shame, but I mean, good for LA to keep him. Patty Mills, I was joking the other day, or last night, whenever Patty Mills went off for 42 in the bronze medal game in the Olympics, he has had an amazing Olympic campaign. And credit to him, the guy's an absolute star. He's been such a pillar for the Australian Boomers basketball for such a long time. So really good to see him get a medal eventually. And finally, I think it was fourth place in a row for the Boomers. And it was really good to see that they got the job done. I was joking about the fact that Kyrie Irving is going to come off the bench behind Patty Mills the way that he's been playing. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Patty Mills is going to struggle to get some minutes to be relevant, but he's an all-round legend. He's a great locker room guy, and he's going to have his moments. Kyrie is not the most reliable guy when it comes to injury and, I suppose, personality is the nicest way to put it. I think that Kyrie's got some pretty severe underlying problems, which impacts his ability to stay on the basketball court. So I think Patty could have a little bit of value there, but overall I think he's probably going to struggle to maintain value in any sort of ongoing role with Brooklyn. Robin Lopez, he's gone to Orlando. Really nice. He's going to be buried behind Wendell Carter Jr. and Mo Bamba, but he played some really good basketball to end the season with the Wizards, which was obviously to the detriment of our man Daniel Gafford. But Wendell Carter and Mo Bamba are definitely the guys there in Orlando. Robin Lopez will be behind those two. Bjelica, Iguodala, and Otto Porter Jr. to Golden State. I don't really think that any of those guys are going to be fantasy relevant. I like it for depth. I'm not sure that any will get enough minutes to be a viable option, but if we're picking up any here, then I'm going to say maybe Otto Porter Jr. He's somebody that could go undrafted, which is ridiculous given he was a 5th rounder 4 or 5 years ago. He just hasn't stayed healthy. He's a good defender, but I think he's going to struggle for opportunities on the offensive end, and Bjelica could get some minutes at the 4. He could get some starting minutes at the 4, but I think that overall he's going to be more of a deep league guy. I think they're all going to be more deep league guys. Iggy in a deepest of deep. But yeah, I think for Golden State as an actual real life trying to win a championship, I think it's a really good move. Onto the potentially relevant people, and apologies if I'm absolutely streaming through this. I'm going to try and, again, it's my first video, so I'm going to try and get it up on here with all of the moves, but we're going to go into the potentially relevant people, and then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the ones that are more relevant and what the fallout for these people and what these moves look like. So Bryn Forbes, he's gone to San Antonio. Mills is obviously gone. DeRozan's obviously gone, so there's going to be some wing minutes to go around. They do have a fair amount of depth in this position, though, so I don't think it's one to get too excited about. We're looking at 2 positions that are going to be shared between Bryn Forbes, going to be shared between Derek White, going to be shared between DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker. Devin Vassell maybe will go down a little bit into the 2 slot if they're playing a bigger lineup. Maybe Josh Primo gets some minutes there, but or Trey Jones, but overall, I think at the most, we're looking at probably 12 points, 3 assists, and a couple of triples, which is good enough for deep league. But unless there is an injury, which Derek White has proven that he can't stay healthy, and Lonnie Walker is not a good defender, Bryn Forbes has a shot at relevancy, but not as it currently looks. Nunn, he's moved to LA. I really, really like this move for him. I really, really like this move for LA as well. Schroeder, it's troubling, it's concerning, it's moronic. The fact that Schroeder turned down an $84 million deal trying to get some more. I don't know what was going through his head. He obviously saw what Gordon Hayward did. It doesn't look as though there are too many bites going. It's probably a blessing in disguise, because I think that Nunn is going to be a better option for the Lakers, especially coming off the bench. They've obviously upgraded with Westbrook in the starting point guard role, and I think LeBron is going to play some more at the 4, and I think that Nunn is going to be the first guard off the bench, and realistically we've seen what he can prove to do and what he can produce with minutes and with a bit of a license. So if he can get 30 minutes a night, which I think could be a little bit of a stretch, we could be looking at kind of a 15, 3 and 3 with 2.5 triples, maybe a steal a night, and that is enough for kind of late round guy with a bit of upside. So I wouldn't be sleeping on Nunn too much. You got Malik Monk as well. Similar sort of situation, pretty much the same player as Nunn. I think he's probably a little bit of a worse version. So I think that if either of those two are going to be drafted, take Nunn ahead of Monk. I think that Monk will probably go ahead of Nunn, but I like the opposite. points and triples with a little bit of else across the board. Again, minutes off the bench, deep league sort of guy for Malik. But yeah, I really like the shape of the LA team for this season as long as everybody can remain healthy. Andre Drummond, he is now in Philadelphia, which is pretty damn funny given how much Embiid has paid out on Andre Drummond in the past. And now they're sharing a position, or Andre Drummond is backing him up in a position. There's not much here unless Andre Drummond gets minutes. Similar to Hassan Whiteside, statistically he's a good defender, but in real life he's not a good defender. He's long, so he fills the lane, so he gets his steals. He gets a block or a block and a half every so often because he is long and because he chases those stats. But realistically, he's not a good defender. He doesn't work in the modern basketball because he can't shoot from the free throw line. He can't shoot outside the paint, and he's slow. So there's even guys like your Jared Allen, your Rashawn Holmes, who can at least get up and down the court. Andre Drummond is slow. So I don't really like it. Obviously, we all know that Joel Embiid is an injury-prone sort of guy, and going into the playoffs, he probably played the most basketball he's played throughout his entire career, but he still looked a bit undercooked, and maybe this is a recipe and a blueprint for Embiid to sit some more, but even still, I'm going to let somebody else draft Drummond, even if it is late, because somebody else will, and I don't necessarily think that we can trust him just yet, but let's wait to see how the roster ships out a little bit. Rudy Gay, Eric Paschall to Utah. I like these guys. Same reason that I liked Markieff Morris and I liked PJ Tucker. Really good real life positions. I think they're upgrades on Royce O'Neal on the defensive end and on the offensive end, respectively. I think they're going to have nights where they go off, but I think that they're second unit guys with a bit of second round or second unit uptick. So Rudy Gay, we know that he's pretty consistent whenever it comes to 10, 12 points. He'll get a block. He'll get you 6, 7 rebounds. Eric Paschall will likely be the same. Kelly Oubre, I tossed and turned whether or not I have Oubre in the potentially relevant or the very relevant. I've got him in the potentially relevant side of things because I don't know. It is such an unknown one with this Charlotte team. So if you didn't know, Kelly Oubre, he's now in Charlotte. He probably had his choice of suitors. He's on a 2-year, $25 million contract. He would have been able to, he's a good defender, so he would have been able to pick which team he wanted to go to, and he was very, very outspoken with his role on Golden State last year. Didn't think that he should have been coming off the bench, didn't think that that he should take a secondary role, and that's why he moved on. So he's going to a team in Charlotte who has got they've got Lonzo at point, Terry Rozier at the 2, they've got Gordon Hayward at the 3, and then you've got your Miles Bridges and PJ Washington at the 4 with Plumlee at the 5. And I don't know whether or not Kelly Oubre is going to move any of those guys out of those roles. So I think if any, he could take away from Terry Rozier. Lonzo is the primary ball guy. LaMelo is the primary ball guy. He is going to run the offense, so they don't necessarily need Rozier for that. Oubre is a much better defender than Rozier, so I think that there is a chance that he starts and that Rozier runs a second unit. If that is the case, he could be in for a similar season to 2019-20 where he averaged close to 19 points, 6.5 and 1.3 steals. That's his absolute ceiling here, though. So if that is the case, he's looking at a late 6th, early 7th round, but it's so uncertain. So right now, if we're going into a draft and we are looking at picks 50 to 70 and Kelly Oubre's there, I'm more likely to leave him because last year he just burnt me so many times, and unless he gets his shot consistent on the offensive end, I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust him on the defensive end as well. So Yeah, that's why I've moved him to the lukewarm, potentially relevant side, because he could turn into be a really good player if he's starting. And Gordon Hayward is not exactly the healthiest, so there is the chance there. But, or if there's still moves, Charlotte could still be making some moves. But right now, they've gone from being a bang average side to a just outside of the playoff side to a potentially relevant in the East side, or relevant for the playoffs, I should say, with a really deep list. So I really like the moves that Charlotte have been making in the offseason. Alex Caruso to Chicago. I like this. I really, really like this. I don't think that he's going to make too much noise whenever it comes to the offensive end, but he's such a good defender. I think that he's going to be the go-to point guard off the bench. I think Kobe White has burnt that role, and I think he's got a really, really shot at having some potential relevancy, some sort of, I don't want to show my age here by saying Tony Allen, but a late round guy that is just a steal specialist with a couple of assists. So I think that he's got a little bit of relevancy here with the potential to be really, really good. I think he's worth a look at in a standard league, so we're talking 10, 12 teams. I think that Alex Caruso is worth a look with one of your last two picks. And I've got Kelly Olynyk here. Kelly Olynyk, he is now in Detroit. So gone are the days where he absolutely smashed at Houston. So if we're looking at how this roster is shaping up, you've got Beef Stew, Isaiah Stewart at center. He's going to get all of those minutes now with Plumlee at Charlotte. And then you're going to get Jeremy Grant starting at power forward. Those two are set in stone. Those two are their building blocks that they're going to move around. I think that Olynyk's still going to get his 30 minutes a night, and he's going to get those backing up between those two, depending on the rotations, depending on how they stagger the offense. And I think that he has a shot at some sort of relevancy with that sort of a lineup. Whether he's going to get back to his, I think in the last 30 games last year, he had something like 17 and 8, 4 assists. I don't think that he's going to get to that, but I think that he's definitely worth a look. If you're looking for a big late in your draft and someone who can score, Kelly Olynyk is probably the guy that you want to have a look at. And worst case scenario, you drop him, you pick somebody else up off the waivers, because it's going to be a really deep league this year. That's all I've got for the potentially relevant ones. Hopefully I've ticked on all of them. Again, hopefully I haven't raced through them all too much, but I did want to get to the really juicy stuff. So the really relevant ones, the ones that are going to potentially get you a couple of sneaky late round picks, the ones that are going to get you some sleepers, the potential busts as well, because you don't want to be sending a fourth round pick on somebody who is not going to have the sort of season that you want. First one off the block is probably going to be that guy. So DeMar DeRozan to Chicago. Chicago, if you don't know, were super busy this offseason. DeMar is he's a fantasy-friendly guy. He's someone who, in recent years, has been able to create shots for others. He has continued to get to the line and pound that free throws down. I think he's been going at pretty close to 50% shooting from the field. He hasn't really worked on a three-point shot, which is fine because a lot of his value has come from other areas. But this is a really stacked team. So I think that DeRozan is going to take a step back this year with the lack of touches, because I'm going to touch on another person here, Lonzo Ball. But you've got Lonzo, you've got Zach LaVine, you've got DeMar DeRozan, you've got Vooch, you've got Patrick Williams. I don't think they've found a suitor for Lauri Markkanen yet. Caruso I just mentioned, Kobe White. There's a lot of hands and there's a lot of players that are going to get shots. DeRozan is obviously going to be right at the top of that pecking order. But I think that where a lot of his value has come from, bulk free throws, has come from assists, to go along with that scoring and that high volume and high percentage scoring, I think that he's going to drop off a little bit. He doesn't steal, he doesn't block. If he's not making threes, and he's not assisting, and he's going to be consistent from the line, but he's not going to be there at the same sort of volume as he was, like 7 a game, 8 a game, 9 a game that he could get. If he's only getting there 4 times a game, that's still great because he's going to make them pretty much every single time. But that takes a massive hit on his relevancy, and that takes a massive hit on his potential draft day value, on his ADP. So I still like him as a 6th round guy. If somebody is wanting to reach for him in the 4th round because they think that it's DeMar DeRozan and he's got a lot of name and brand, let them take him, because I think that he is going to revert back to a 24-4 guy, which is fine, except you can get 24-4 guys late in your draft. The big winners from this, I personally think, and the ones that I'm super excited about drafting, is his old Spurs teammates, DeJounte Murray and Derek White. So their splits last year without DeRozan. DeJounte, we know he's a steals guy, so ignore that part of what I'm about to say. But 16.5 points, 6.8 boards, nearly 5 assists, 0.8 in terms of steals, 48% from the field, 84% from the line is just money. I think that DeJounte Murray is going to smash it this year. I would be taking him a hell of a lot earlier than what you're thinking. If you've got him penciled in for a 6th round guy, bump him up a couple of rounds. I think that he is somebody who is going to just take off. He's a great steals guy, as much as those numbers don't necessarily indicate that. He's going to get you 1.5 minimum per game. So have a look at DeJounte Murray, 4th, 5th turn. I really, really like that. Derek White is another guy that I really like. 16.3 points. So these are the splits without DeRozan. 16.3 points, 3.8 boards, 4.5 assists, half a steal, and 1.5 blocks on 40 and 92%. How good are those blocks? Yes, we are talking small sample size, but I absolutely love my out of position stats. Players who can get big man stats, or guards who can get big man stats, big man who can get guard stats. I think that that's money for jam. I think that it's such a bonus whenever you're drafting a team and you can get 1.5. He's not going to get 1.5. 1 block a game out of your point guard or your shooting guard. Or in DeJounte Murray's side, he's going to get you 7 boards a game. Or you can get Brook Lopez, who's going to get you 3 boards a game. Like, it makes a lot more sense for me to justify spending an early round pick on somebody who combines a couple of different positions. So that's why I love DeJounte Murray. That's why I love Derek White. And Derek White is such an undervalued guy when it comes to fantasy, because he has been injured, because he has been buried. Take Derek White. Take him inside the top 100, easily within the top 100. Take him inside the top 80, and he will reward you with fantasy goodness. The other guy I really, really like, Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball is coming off a tough year that he had in New Orleans. A lot of people are writing him off, which is fine. I'm absolutely okay with them doing that because I'm not, and it means that I can get him. He finished the year with, I think, 15, 4, and 5 or thereabouts. He had 3 triples per game, which was really, really good for him. But the thing is that New Orleans were running him into the corner. Whenever they had the offensive possession, he would run to the corner and he would be almost a 3-point specialist sort of guy. That's not his game. He's never been a good shooter. And yes, that's added to his value from a fantasy standpoint. That's not where his fantasy is coming from. Towards the end of the year, they played him more as the pure point guard that he is. And he was able to create shots for himself. He was able to create shots for others, and he got up to 7 assists per game. That's where I see him at for this Bulls team. I think that he's going to play really, really well with Vooch in the pick and roll. I think that he's going to... Zach LaVine and DeRozan love attacking the ring, so he is going to be able to get the ball up the court really quickly. He loves rocketing it down from a defensive rebound. I think that there's going to be a lot of fast movement in the Chicago team this year, and I really like him inside the 5th round. It's going to be it's going to be tough for me to take him and to take DeJounte Murray inside the top 5 rounds, because my scoring's really going to hurt. But those two guys are going to absolutely light it up. And Lonzo this year is going to show everybody why he was a top round pick. And I think that he is going to be a really, really good fit inside this Bulls side. Obviously, the one that I spoke about before, the big loser out of this is Coby White. I mean, I don't need to harp on about it, but he had the opportunity to take the starting role last year, and he absolutely, royally, spectacularly failed at that. I know, because I had him in so many places, and everybody that was in my leagues had him in their inbox trying to get something, or me trying to get something for him before I dropped him to the waivers. And he was just so bad. He was just so bad. He's an okay scorer, and I think he's truly a shooting guard that they were trying to turn into a point guard. But unless it's a deep league, let somebody else draft him. Let him go undrafted if that's what it takes. Like deep league, like 30 team sort of deep league, even 100 team. That's not possible. But I don't like Coby White this year. Who I do like is my man Spencer Dinwiddie. I've got a Spencer Dinwiddie Brooklyn top. I was going to put that on, except I don't look great in basketball tops, so I just chose not to for the first video. So Spencer Dinwiddie, he's now in Washington. I got him late a couple of years ago and was banking on a Kyrie injury, which has happened and always will happen. And he was really, really great for me. 21-7 with 2 triples per games. And those numbers are really, really good. But technically, it only returned late round value because he doesn't produce anything on the defensive stats. I think he shot the ball at like 41% from the field, and he is okay from the line, but he's a point guard who was getting there 4 times a game, going at 78%. So it's not going to hurt you, but it's certainly not going to add to your stats. So keep that in mind when his ADP gets absolutely blown to bits. People are going to jump at him because they're going to see 20 points, they're going to see 7 assists, which is fine, but let somebody else take him if he's going to be inside the top 75. It hurts for me to say that because I really, really love it, and I think I think Spencer Dinwiddie is going to have some really good value for this Washington team, but I just think that unless you can get him on the back end of the middle rounds, I think that he's somebody that might have to go begging to people that are going to be a little bit hungrier. With that being said, and this is something that I'm going to get onto in later podcasts, so I probably don't need to go off on a tangent now, but this year I see a really, really high importance on getting assists early in your draft, because if you don't, then you're going to be stuck with your Spencer Dinwiddies. You're going to be stuck with players who, like your Devontae Grahams, players who are going to get you 5, 6, 7 assists a game, contribute nothing else, and hurt you in those categories. So again, whenever we get closer to, I'm going to go through a couple of different strategies, different ways that I see drafts panning out. But Spence is somebody that you hopefully don't need to reach for because you've already got your assists and you've already got your points, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. It does hurt somebody who I was banking on taking, somebody who I really, really liked from last week, who is Aaron Holiday. I think Aaron Holiday's still going to have a really nice role with this Washington team, especially if Bradley Beal leaves. But as it currently sits, he's somebody that I'd probably leave and look for him. I'd put him on your watch list and look for him to, in the first couple of weeks, to see how he goes. SGA, I don't need to go through this. He got paid to stay in OKC. He is obviously the guy moving forward. Will start up unless they suck, which they could. Then a shutdown could happen, but for me, he's a 5th round or earlier sort of guy. Rashawn Holmes, he got paid at Sacramento, which I really do like. One thing that I would caution everybody with when it comes to Rashawn Holmes is he is a mid to late round guy when it comes to drafts, which is fine. Technically, he returns early round value. I don't, and you shouldn't either, believe that he is an early round guy, because he is not. He is somebody who, the way that those algorithms are set up is it takes a lot into account whenever it comes to the percentages, which he has a monstrous field goal and he has a decent free throw. He blocks really well and he rebounds really well and he doesn't turn the ball over. That's where he is getting that. There were times last year where he was the number 1 rated center, which is ridiculous. And maybe Jokic had that the whole way through, maybe top 2 or top 3. But he is not somebody who you should be taking that early because he's not that guy. He is an 80 to 90 guy. Inside the top 100 is fine, but outside of that, you'll find me drafting other big men at that point. Norman Powell, don't need to go over him. He got paid. He is staying in Portland. I absolutely love that. I love Norman Powell. He is my sort of guy. He is a scorer who can do a little bit of everything. Contributes really well on the defensive end, which I love as well. I think he's a massive, massive sleeper. And whether Lillard stays or Lillard goes, I am going to be drafting him. One thing that you should be looking at is obviously if he goes, his ADP is going to go through the roof. So if you have early drafts, definitely grab Norman Powell in the hopes that Lillard does go. I do also apologize if you can hear some background noise. My dog is asleep on the couch behind me. Devontae Graham, he is in New Orleans. So I like this, but I also don't like this. I get what New Orleans are trying to do. They are trying to add some more shooting around Zion. They don't want another Anthony Davis situation on their hand where their superstar doesn't think that they can win in this team. But for me, it feels like they've just moved Lonzo for a poorer version of Lonzo. Yes, it's an upgrade whenever it comes to the salary cap, but it's a downgrade, comprehensive downgrade on the defensive end. And offensively, they're kind of the same. Like Devontae, he puts up a hell of a lot of shots. He's not gun shy, and yeah, he can produce 17 and 7 that we saw a couple of years back. But his lack of he's got a team tanking field goal percentage, and he's got no defensive stats. So if you are thinking of taking him in 60s and 70s, that's fine. Again, I can't stress enough about getting assists early because you're going to be stuck with these sort of players, which is tough. It's tough to build a team around these sort of guys. So I personally would be leaving him for somebody else. One person that I do love, and I think is going to go under the radar, massive steal potential here, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So per 36 last year, he had 18.2 points, 5.2 boards, 3.6 assists, 1.7 steals, and 2.7 triples. I think, obviously, the primary guard spots are going to be between Noor and between Graham. So it'll be interesting to see who becomes the primary ball handler and who's going to be more of the two guard. Obviously, they're going to play more positionless basketball because that's the way the NBA is right now. But for me, I would almost be leaving Graham and grabbing Alexander Walker real late. I think he's got some really, really big upside, and he's a solid defender. He's a long defender, and that, again, is the way that the NBA is going, so I really like him. Evan Fournier, he's in New York. Evan Fournier is fine. I personally think he's a real boring guy. He does it all across the board, so I think that he is somebody that you should be looking at. I think that if you can get him closer to 80 than 60, that's fine. I like that. I would struggle to get him earlier than that because he doesn't do enough for me. I think he's got a low ceiling and a high floor, and he's just going to be consistent across there. So depending on how his team is shaping up, maybe that's the way you look at it. Gary Trent Jr., he got paid in Toronto, similar vein to Fournier. I think that they can pad the stat sheet and they can do a bit of everything. I think that once Dragic leaves Toronto, I think that Trent Jr. has got a really good chance to produce even more. But yeah, I definitely would be looking at Trent Jr. towards the end of the drafts. Kyle Lowry, he's in Miami. I really, 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 really like this. I think that he is, last year in a tanking team, he just sat, whether it was niggle or whatever, he sat because why get injured whenever your team's no good? I think that Miami are going to make a real good push this year to be in the top couple of seeds in the East. Defensively, they're going to be an absolute powerhouse. I think on the offensive end, he's going to be able to facilitate, create. He's going to be able to do everything. I think he's definitely fifth round value with close to 16 and 5, 3 triples over a steal a game, potentially stealing a half a game. I think that it's going to impact Butler probably the most. Bam's value, a lot of his value comes from his consistency and his defensive stats. I think that Butler is going to have the ball in his hands less, which means less assists. So we'll see how that goes. But I still like Kyle Lowry as a top 50 sort of guy. Mike Conley, he is in Utah. One thing I will say about him, well, two things I'll say about him is he is someone who has obviously been injured the last couple of years. Fine. No issues with that. Take him at your own risk. But what I would say is that if you do take that risk, he will reward you with a low turnover game. He assists really well and doesn't turn the ball over. I think his assist turnover ratio was like 3-1 last year, which is right up there in the top of the league. And I really, really like that. So I'm thinking about Mike Conley towards the 70s and 80s, depending on how healthy my other players are. But I think that he's got some really, really good potential to beat his ADP. Jared Allen, I love Jared Allen. I've loved Jared Allen for years. I think that he's got such a fantasy-friendly skill set. He has been paid by Cleveland to stay there as the center for the future, which I think is a great decision for Cleveland real life. I think that come draft day, I think he's going to be a mid to late round guy. I think that some are going to get worried about Mobley, which is absolutely fine by me because I'm not. I think that Jared Allen is going to be really good. I think Mobley is going to create a bit more. He's going to be able to shoot from a bit more from the outside, almost Christian Wood like, or like a JJJ where they can do a little bit of everything. And I think that Jared Allen is got a really good shot at top 50 value. He is going to get you 14 rebounds a game or 10 to 14 rebounds a game. He's going to get you close to 2 blocks a game. He's going to get you 10, 12, 14, 15 points a game. He doesn't really assist, which is fine. He's going to get you half a steal. But he does it with, on the offensive end, he does it with a really high field goal, which, like Richaun Holmes, is deceiving whenever it comes to overall standings. But between the two of them, I think Holmes' ADP will be higher, but I like Jared Allen as a late round sort of guy. Big fan. Maybe I'm just being biased, but I think he is going to have a really good year. And finally, certainly not the best till last, probably the most concerning until last, is Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker signed in New York in a classic New York thing to do, where Kemba has been let down by his body, not by his skill set. He's going to get his shots. He's going to run the offense there. That's fine. I've got no issues with his outputs. What I am concerned about is his health. His knees are so bad. He will likely sit. He is playing in a Tibbs team. Tibbs does run his guys into the ground. He plays his starters big minutes, and I don't know about Kemba. I think that he'll go. I think there's going to be a pocket in drafts where you're going to see Lowry go, you're going to see Kemba go, you're going to see Conley go, you're going to see Chris Paul probably be at the start of that list. You're going to see these guys in the probably 40 to 55 range. All of these veteran guards go at a similar time. Kemba's got to be at the end of that list. He's got to be at the end of that list and a little bit more for mine. I don't think that I'm going to be touching him until 70 or 80, which it's fine because it means I probably won't get him. Somebody's going to take him above that, which is fine. I just don't trust him. I think that minutes played and health is one of the key fantasy stats that you should be looking at. And yes, he's going to turn out a 24-5 floor with a couple of threes. Great. But as I said, it's all about health for Kemba. And if he stays healthy, fantastic. You're going to get yourself a steal on draft day. But he's not getting younger. His body's not getting any better. So I think that he's somebody that I'm going to leave for somebody else. Now, that's the end of the podcast. I want to thank everybody for joining me on YouTube. I want to thank everybody for joining me on Spotify. And next week, assuming that there's no big changes, I'm going to go through some rookies and look at what their output is for this year, who I want to be targeting, who I think's got a really good spot to produce some value, and who I think you should be putting onto your watch list for later in the season. But until next time, don't forget to rate and subscribe.